Chapter 13 of A Copper Harvest by a Self-Made Man. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 13. The Little Scheme Which Failed. The one main street of Rocky Gulch was lit up from end to end by the numerous kerosene lamps which burned at the saloons and other buildings lining the right-hand side of the thoroughfare. Every drinking place had a crowd of patrons attracted by various devices such as a wheezy piano played by an indifferent performer, an asthmatic flute from which uncertain notes floated out on the night air, or a squeaky violin in the hands of a poor musician. The miners of Rocky Gulch, however, were not particular to a shade. Like children, they were easily pleased by any old thing, and the more liquor they imbibed, the less they cared for the entertainment provided to draw them into the saloon. In the very last house of resort in the row, two men were seated by themselves at a rough apology for a table, talking earnestly together and paying very little attention to the rest of the assembled company, which had begun to thin out somewhat. The pair in question was composed of Otis Clymer and Dave Plunkett. They had arrived at Rocky Gulch the day before, after a visit to Trinity, where they had gone after finding they had been euchred in the mine scheme. They had made this trip for the purpose of shadowing Gideon Prawl and the boys in an effort to discover some means of recovering the lost advantage. They had found no difficulty in becoming acquainted with the immediate plans of the rightful owners of the deserted copper mine, and laid plans accordingly to try and circumvent them. They had made friends with the proprietor of the saloon in which they were now seated, and instead of putting up at the hotel when they came back this time, they arranged a bunk in this place. After sounding the saloon keeper, whose name was Coffee, they had partially taken him into their confidence. That is, to the extent of telling them they wanted to get possession of the Sanders claim at Beaver Creek, without betraying the fact that the ground covered a copper deposit of great value. They told Coffee that the Prawl party had got ahead of them, and they were anxious to turn the tables on them. Coffee was a man of no principle at all, and this fact had recommended him to their notice. He suggested to Clymer and Plunkett that a good plan would be to try to steal the bill of sale given by Jim Sanders to Prawl. As neither of the two conspirators had the nerve to engage in such a hazardous enterprise himself, Coffee proposed, for a $20 bill, to send a Chinaman he employed about the premises on this mission to the camp of the newcomers at the creek. He introduced them to Mean Fun, who he said was the individual for the job. So the Mongolian was duly instructed and dispatched. "If he succeeds in getting his fingers on that paper, the game will be in our hands," said Plunkett to his partner in the nefarious scheme as they sat at the table in Coffee's saloon awaiting the return of their moon-eyed agent. "Yes," coincided Clymer, "for we have already managed to get a duplicate from Sanders in their own name to take the place of the original. A $100 bill will induce the old soak to swear that he sold the claim to us, and that he doesn't know anything about this man Prawl and his companions. Coffee says we can depend on the Celestial to get the document if it is to be obtained, for he says the old Nick isn't a circumstance alongside of Mean Fun," returned Plunkett, blowing a cloud of smoke ceilingward as he puffed on one of the establishment's villainous cigars. "If it is to be obtained?" ejaculated Clymer with an ugly frown. "It must be obtained, or—" "Well?" remarked Plunkett as his companion paused. "Or what?" "We must adopt extremer measures." "Such as, for instance?" asked Plunkett with a wicked leer. "No use of anticipating matters," returned Clymer, wriggling out of an explanation. "Let us wait till we see what the Mongolian accomplishes." "Huh!" snorted Plunkett, regarding his associate contemptuously. "It is now nearly 24 hours since Mean Fun departed on his mission," said Clymer reflectively. "It is to be hoped we shall hear from him soon." "That man Prawl looks like a person who won't bear fooling with," remarked the Sackville hotel man. "If he should happen to tumble to the Chink's little game, I shall feel kinder sorry for Mean Fun. What do you think about it?" "It'll be his funeral, not ours," replied Clymer carelessly. "It'll be ours, too, for in that case we shouldn't get the paper we want." Clymer frowned, and then, feeling that talking was dry work, ordered drinks for himself and his friend. Coffee mixed and brought the liquor, and he did not forget himself in the order. He judged from the liberal disposition of Plunkett especially that his new acquaintances were well supplied with the needful, and he was anxious to relieve them, without actually putting his hand in their pockets, of as much of their wad as he could entice in his direction. "Well, gents, here's hoping things are coming your way," said Coffee as the three touched glasses. "They'll come our way all right if that Mongolian of yours brings back the paper we want," said Clymer, setting down his glass. "He'll get it if the thing is to be found," replied Coffee confidently. "I've seen many slick Chinamen in my time, gents, but Mean Fun can give 'em all cards and spades and beat 'em out every time. Take my word on it." "I hope so, but I want you to understand he isn't up against such an easy proposition. That prospector is a hard old nut to bamboozle, while the two of those boys, at least, are as bright as you can find them. If they catch your Chinaman up to any tricks, it'll go hard with him. They're welcome to handle Mean Fun as roughly as they please if they detect him, but that they'll never do." "I'd like to feel as sure about it as you do," said Clymer anxiously. "One would think you gents had struck a lead down at the creek. You're so desperately in earnest to get your flukes on that claim," said Coffee pointedly. "It isn't that," replied Plunkett quickly. "We've got another reason for wanting to get a hold of it." "There must be something worth finding there," persisted Coffee, "or those chaps wouldn't go into camp on that spot. Looks rather suspicious to me. Instead of coming by the short route through the gulch here, you tell me they have gone around by water. It doesn't seem to me they would have done that if they didn't aim to keep their presence there a secret as long as possible. I think you gents will find it to your interest to let me in on this thing, or I may take it into my head to do a little investigating on my own hook. Beaver Creek ain't so far away, but I could run down there in an hour or two, and there isn't any law against a man using his eyes or asking questions about matters that interest him." Coffee's unexpected attitude disconcerted the two schemers. They had hoped to keep the existence of the copper deposit in the background. Now they realized that they would have to let the saloon keeper into the secret, and once they did that, they did not doubt that he would demand an interest in the mine in return for his silence and cooperation. "Well, gents, am I with you in this?" asked Coffee with a significant look, regarding his two patrons complacently, as if he believed he had them in a tight place. Or what he was going to add never transpired, for at that moment the little wiry form of Mean Fun appeared at the entrance to the saloon, and then like a shadow glided up to the table where the three men sat and dropped Gideon Prawl's pocketbook midway between them, a grin, childlike and bland, resting on his yellow countenance. For a moment the group was taken by surprise. Then three hands reached for the tempting object, and, as it happened, the saloon-keeper's fingers were undermost and closed firmly about the pocketbook. "It belongs to us," cried Clymer eagerly. "By what right?" "Don't lose your tempers, gents," said Coffee coolly, reaching for his revolver with his disengaged right hand and whisking it out in a jiffy. "Let's come to an understanding in this matter. Good things are not so plentiful round hereabouts that I'm letting one go by me when the chance offers. Come now, own up. What have you discovered at Beaver Creek?" Both Clymer and Plunkett looked at him in sulky defiance. "Take your hands off my fist, will you?" demanded Coffee, menacing them with his gun. They obeyed the order with manifest reluctance. The saloon-keeper drew the pocketbook toward him, but made no movement to open it. "Well, since you won't open your mouths, I'll see if the Chinaman can't throw a little light on the subject. He's been there, and there isn't much that escapes his sharp eyes. I may as well tell you, gents, that I sent him to the creek as much on my own account as yours. Did you fancy I was such a fool as to not see that there must be something unusual in your eagerness to get a hold of that claim? And I knew the other crowd wouldn't take the trouble to go and camp out in the wilderness unless something was doing. Now, Mean Fun, tell me what you saw down at the creek." "All right." Mean Fun then told his story, how he had reached Beaver Creek about sunrise that morning, how he thought that he had fooled Prawl and the boys with his San Francisco yarn, and how he had asked for work. "Me catchy job, Wheelie Locks and Ballawadaminey." "Oh, so there's a mine down there, is there?" laughed Coffee. "Is that your secret, gents? Funny nobody around here knows anything about such a thing. What does it look like, Mean Fun?" "Holy and lock. Looks like a hole in the rock, eh? Quartz or fine gold, ye other heathen?" "No goldy." "What, no gold?" The Celestial shook his head. "Diggy plenty lead locks out of miney, but he samey in flanty boat. Digging red rocks and loading them on a flat boat. What's the meaning of that, gents?" What is this red rock? Is it copper ore? A new light breaking in on his mind. Yes, it's copper ore, answered Clymer sulkily as the admission was reluctantly forced from him. Now you know what we're after. You might have made a clean breast of that in the first place. Now, gents, are we pards in this mine? I suppose we are, growled Plunkett. You got us where the hair is short, and we've got to take you in whether we like it or not. Let us drink it on then, and drown all the hard feeling, said Coffee, making a sign to one of his employees. The liquor was served, and the three having drained their glasses, the Chinaman was dismissed, and Coffee, returning his gun to his pocket, opened the pocketbook. What we want, I think, gents, is the bill of sale of the Sanders claim, ain't it? Clymer and Plunkett nodded, and looked eagerly at each bit of memoranda brought to light. When the last paper had been exposed to their gaze and the pocketbook shook out, they sat back in their chairs and stared blankly at each other. End of chapter 13.